welcome to Unreligiously. Today I am so excited to introduce you guys to a new Christian influencer couple who is just starting out on the internet. They've been actually on YouTube for a few years now, but they really now are just starting to make some more waves and get some more visibility, which is how I stumbled across them. Their names are Abby and Ryan, and they also do a podcast together called That's Life Podcast. They have like a channel called the Lucketts or something. It's Abby and Ryan Luckett. We're going to be looking into the That's Life podcast, where Abby is going to talk to us about her experience with marriage, with sexual intimacy, and with how purity culture has affected her marriage. As is true with many of the people that I cover on this channel, they don't seem to really fully grasp that purity culture and this initial teaching was the problem. They seem to think that they just interpreted things wrong, it's their own fault, and I think that this is actually a really good view of purity culture and of how the wedding night and the sex life after they get married can go horribly, terribly wrong when you grow up in this type of religious programming. Trust me, you guys, if you like my other videos about other religious couples like Paul and Morgan, Nathan Sutton, these people feel like the new generation of that, and I have a feeling that we're going to be talking about them a lot more in the future. All right, you guys, I'm not going to do too much longer of an introduction. Let's hear from Abby. I do want to say really quickly before we jump in, though, Abby is really young, so let's keep it kind. With all of my videos, we walk a fine line of these people are promoting harmful ideologies. They maybe are even saying harmful things. They maybe are not sometimes even good people. And I don't ever want to protect those people. But at the same time, the purpose of this video is really to have like an ideological examination of what they're talking about. And we are using Abby's content as the jumping off point for that. And fine line, let's move on, but just in my comment section, let's just be kind. In general, if you're talking about her specifically, we can critique the ideology and the beliefs as harshly as we want.
I don't even know what to say because I'm still learning. And as a woman who's been married for about 5 months now, it is very complex and I don't fully understand my likes, my dislikes. I don't fully know necessarily the beautiful complexity of it. And I think that holds true for a long time. I don't know if there's ever a time where you feel like you have intimacy to a point to where it's like, yep, and now I'm confident and this is how it goes.
Right off the bat, we see Abby detailing her marriage, her disappointment, even though she's not wording it like that, her disappointment with their intimate life and her hope for the future. This is going to be unsurprising for any of you that grew up in purity culture, because the truth is that purity culture tells you that if you wait till marriage, if you don't bring the burden of having sexual sin in your past into your marriage, if you follow the rules, if you stay pure, if you wait for God's best, that you will have a kick-ass sex life. That's like always the phrasing they use for some reason, a kick-ass sex life. You're going to have peace if you're a woman. You're going to feel totally comfortable and relaxed. And the reality is that is just not the case. Unfortunately, before you get married, you probably will have issues, right? We all are imperfect people, and there will be issues in your relationship. The reality is that marriage, even though Christians believe they're entering a spiritual covenant and God is going to bless them and work on them as one flesh, even though they believe that, the reality is that those problems are still going to be brought into marriage, right? I'm getting married in less than a month now. I'm super excited, but the problems that I personally have, I do not think will magically go away. I am still going to have to continue to work on myself. I'm still going to have to apologize for things. And in every area of my life, I can always improve because I am an imperfect person. That's true of my partner too, although if you guys watch my videos enough, you know that I think that he's literally perfect. I can't give you any examples of ways that he needs to improve, but on the basis of knowing everyone's imperfect, I'm sure there's something. But that's not magically going to change once we get married, right? I am going to bring those same issues in. We're not magically going to be more united. I do think that there's obviously a lot to marriage. It is a big, big deal. but we are the people that are entering in it, and signing the paperwork doesn't change the two people that are getting married. And it doesn't change the quality of the relationship, and it doesn't guarantee a good, intimate life. I do want to point this out early on, that she has this hope for the future, that God is going to give her this, help her realize the full beauty of a sexual relationship. You should not be feeling this way. I don't want to say should, because I'm sure there are people who have overcome this. It's not the world's greatest problem. But I do think that if you're unhappy a few months into your marriage, that's something to discuss and work on, not assume that it's a spiritual growth area. And when you make it spiritual when it's not, it unfortunately makes it so that you're not able to actually address the root of the problem.
I do think you can develop a rhythm. I think you can develop a format that works for you, and you can know what you and your partner like to do, how you guys can be pleased on either side. But for me and where I'm at right now, I'm still figuring that out. And I felt this extreme urge to talk about it. I know I said that this week's episode was going to be part 2 of the Q&A. Last week I did a Q&A part 1, and I am still going to put out the Q&A part 2, but we put a clip on our podcast Instagram about intimacy and me waiting for marriage and all these things, and a lot of people had a lot of things to say, and it really just got me thinking and talking. And Ryan and I are in a place right now where we're thinking and talking, and I kind of just can't stop thinking about my relationship with sex and intimacy and what I've learned and what I'm still learning. And I can't help but think that there's got to be other people out there that are like me. And the thing in engagement is that, yes, you can get all the advice and you can have all of the biblical knowledge, but there's just not something that hits closer than talking to someone who has been through the same experiences as you. Now, of course, the end all be all, take this advice, listen to this knowledge, I'm going to tell you is from Jesus, from God. Read your Bible. I have my Bible right next to me because I'm going to try to be as biblically sound in this podcast as possible when talking about this. But the beautiful thing about Jesus is that he met people where they were at, and he told people biblical truths and the glory of God through ways that they would understand. And for me, I feel like my best way of trying to, share his good news is by speaking from my personal experiences. That's something that's always come very natural to me, and that's something that I firmly believe, if I go through something, I want to share it, because why go through it if I don't share it, kind of thing. And that's just me personally. I'm not saying everybody has to do that. I'm not saying you need to start a podcast and go talk about your sex life. I'm not saying that at all, but I am just coming on here saying this is me putting on my big sister hat, wanting to talk to you, because I wish I had something like this when I went through engagement season.
We have seen this type of rhetoric coming from a lot of Christian women, particularly young Christian women, who waited till marriage to have sex because they're trying to grapple with basically the reality that their whole lives they've believed that their wedding night's going to be beautiful and perfect. And then they have their wedding night, and then they realize, everyone is saying beautiful and perfect because they're referring to it being so them, and it being beautiful because it's them together, and because literally how else can you describe the first time having sex with your partner? You can't say it was horrible, right? It was beautiful because it was us. That's what they all say. These Christian women take that and go, oh my God, everyone is just having these beautiful, and it doesn't even matter because it's just us. And yes, that is true, you guys. I think a lot of people who wait till their wedding night have uncomfortable experiences and all of that. That's not that abnormal. But once again, I don't think we need to spiritualize it. I think it's then a conversation, whereas you see people like this trying to grapple with, okay, I didn't get the promises I wanted. God doesn't lie, so that means that I must have misunderstood, and so I want to warn other women. But then there's also, they've been told their whole lives that purity culture is bad. They've heard this, they've heard that messaging, and they've advocated for purity. And so they have to both talk about the very clear harms of purity culture while also saying, it's not purity culture that's the problem. What we need more, and this is what Girl Defined also comes back to, they say, we need older people being mentors to young couples in their sexual relationships. That's kind of what she's saying here. I'm going to be a big sister so you guys can be prepared. I think more people should be prepared without having to have an older sexual mentor. I'd rather shoot my kneecaps off truly than to have an older couple try to sexually mentor me and my partner. It's weird, and that type of, like, setting you up for needing that is already just going to make you have a weird viewpoint on sex. But yeah, this is just something that's really common. These women realize it's not what they were promised, and then they're horrified. They feel this deep need to speak out about it, but it's really difficult for them to do so because it's very clear to everybody else that it is the religious programming, but they have to talk about it without making it clear that it is the religious program.
Let's talk. So Ryan and I are in a place right now. We're 5 months into marriage, and I'm still not fully settled into the idea of intimacy with my husband. And what I mean by that is it's not just like an easy, this thing just happens for me kind of thing. I have to think about it. I have to work at it. And I am not really sure what I like still. I don't know what I like. And if you're listening to this and you're like, what do you mean, what do you like? I felt that too. Before I had sex, I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't know what options were out there. I didn't even really know like the motions of how it went.
We all know at this point that in purity culture, they tell you not even to think about these things, to not educate yourself, and to not talk about these topics to your future spouse, because it could cause you to lust. You're only supposed to dig into these things if you absolutely have to post-marriage, okay? And that's usually with the help of a mentor or a pastor. Like, they can recommend a safe book for you to read. I do just want to say to anybody out there that's waiting for marriage or is choosing abstinence for any reason, you are deserving of base education, you guys. And I just want to say that this is a myth. You having a baseline understanding of your own body, of your partner's body, having that information in advance, understanding your own boundaries, all of that is of benefit to you, and it's not going to make you suddenly want to be more sexually active than you did before, okay? I want to relieve you of that fear. That is not the truth. I think the church is maybe more concerned that if people educate themselves, they'll realize that, like, soul ties aren't real, and that's actually not in the Bible. So they just tell people, like, don't research these topics at all, because they would realize the Bible doesn't really have, like, a whole ton to say on these topics, in my opinion, from a progressive viewpoint. I'm going to let her continue, but once again, this is really a failure in the education here.
I was someone growing up who fully blocked it off. You know, in the Bible, it talks about, like, if you lust with your mind, that's still cheating, essentially. Or if you don't even let your mind cross that boundary of lust, basically, is what the Bible says. And so I pretty much just cut it all off. You know, I didn't watch the scenes in the movies. I skipped past them, and I didn't let myself picture anyone naked.
This is anecdotal and it's going to be oversharing. So if you're related to me, because people that are, or if you're going to be, this isn't a loophole, skip like a minute ahead on this. But when I was in literal high school, I remember a friend slept over and I was like this little edgy homeschooler, and I was like, I loved Eminem at the time, like, genuinely. I don't know how I got by with, listening to Eminem, but 8 Mile was out and we wanted to watch 8 Mile, and there's a sex scene in that, and it's not that graphic, but he picks her up and they're having sex. And I remember I paused it and I turned to my friend and I was like, explain that to me. And she was like, what do you mean? And I was like, how? And I realized later on that I don't know why I thought that male genitalia just pointed straight down 100% of the time. So I don't even know how I thought. Now that I'm thinking back, I'm like, how did I even think sex worked if it's like straight down to the earth? I don't know what I thought, but when they were doing that, I was like, that makes no sense. And then I think eventually my friend tried to explain to me that, like, it's a body part, it moves. But anyway, I don't want to get too explicit there. But yeah, it's like these watching movies, these things, I'm not saying that children need to be, again, it's like they should not be exposed to graphic content, but basic education like this, I feel bad for her on one hand, because I know that a lot of people are going to blame her. And partially, yes, like, for myself too, it's like I made the decision to shield my mind and not mentally go there and blah, 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 blah. However, not as much as her. Like, I relaxed through college, but I still wasn't out and about, You know what I mean? But yeah, it's just this lack of education, this thought-stopping technique that sets people up to have a very hard time in marriage because they're so used to telling themselves, like, not to go there, not to go, training themselves, really, to have one reaction. And you can't just flip a switch, especially if you're into your 20s already. I get a little bit agitated hearing, like, fresh 18-year-olds talk about how they waited till marriage and they don't have any issues. I think 18 is like a developmentally appropriate time to start figuring those things out, so that makes sense to me. It's these people that are waiting into adulthood past the time that would be typical that start to see these problems, right? It's not 18-year-olds that get married as much. It's really they're still uneducated, but I don't know, it seems to go better for them than people that wait even longer and really, really well past puberty, like 25, 23, they are making sure that they do not engage with these thoughts on any level.
In my brain or anything like this, and this might sound silly, but I just didn't. And honestly, because number one, I knew I shouldn't, but number two, I didn't really just want to. I don't know, I was just so focused on other things, my brain didn't really go there. And I just knew that I was going to wait for marriage to have sex.
Many of my loved ones have chosen to wait until marriage, and they have done that, and I support that, you guys. But again, for any of you that are making that decision, you owe yourself, your partner, and your future marriage a base level education. You do not need to look at explicit content. I don't care if you find Christian resources on this, because even though I still don't agree with them, they're going to probably give you like at least a base knowledge on these things, right? Please, you guys, a base education really, really will just save you so much trouble. And I understand, like, what she's saying here of just not educating yourself, that's not a sin, right? Fleeing from sexual immorality, not a sin. But I do think that they're adding, like, purity culture adds a lot of steps that aren't in the Bible and that are harmful, okay? It's not a sin to not educate yourself about these things, but it's also not a sin to educate them. It's not the same thing as lust. And this is my interpretation of the Bible. This is not like the broad accepted Christian viewpoint, but my understanding in the Bible when they're talking about these things, when they're talking about lust specifically, are people that are, like, fantasizing with intent, okay? Like, you're fantasizing about the wife bathing naked on the roof, and then you're, like, planning in your mind how you're going to make that happen. To me, it's about intent, okay? It's not about a fantasy, like, having natural feelings. To me, the scripture, and this is a more progressive view, those Bible verses are really talking about intent, okay? That's why they're saying if you lust after another man's wife, it's the same thing as sleeping with her. It's like, if the intent in your heart is to do these things and you're trying, like, that is the intent of your heart, God's gonna see it as the same thing, okay? I do not think God is talking about, like, you need to go to the priest after you have a sex dream, okay? I don't think that's the case. So please, if you're waiting till marriage, just consider that, and please just know you owe yourself. You deserve a base level education about your own body.
And so I didn't want to let my brain go to a place of thinking about sex, because that only tempts my flesh and my body to want to have sex. So I just didn't think about it. I just didn't mess with that. I fleed away from that, because sex before marriage is a sin. It is. Now, having the desire to have sex is not a sin. Sex is created by God. Innately, we have these desires.
This is so agitating, because they'll say you can have the desires, but what is the desire for them without it turning into lust, not being allowed to think about it, not being allowed to educate themselves about it, not being able to discuss, like, legitimate adult conversations with their fiancés premaritally. Like, the desire not being wrong, okay, well then you can't demonize the concept of lust just being desire, okay? Because that's really what Christians turn it into. So even though she's saying the right things here, I would ask her if she was sitting next to me, well, what is desire that is okay? What does that look like? Because to most Christians, it's like you're not allowed to explore your body, you're not allowed to self-pleasure, you're not allowed to, nothing. Literally nothing. You have to sit in the hallway during the sex ed class. So when she's saying desire is okay, it's great, it's made by God. Well, no, only in marriage. And the reality is that most people, right? Not everyone, but most people are going to develop a sex drive. They're going to go through puberty and develop these feelings. I agree it's not a sin. It's just that in her belief, any actual like application of having desire, it's vilified completely.
To be sexual with our partner. Paul says in the Bible that it's better to remain single, but if you burn with passion for someone in your heart and you literally can't contain it, then get married. Get married so that you are able to do these things. Like it's not like we're like, oh no, we shouldn't have those feelings.
I'll have to make a video on my, like, if I were going to be a Christian, like how I would interpret the sexual ethic. But when Paul is he's writing literal letters to literal churches, right? He's not writing, at the moment, in his mind, he wasn't writing advice to every church everywhere. I know that it's in the Bible now, and that's what Christians believe. That's fine, we can accept that. But at the time, his intent was talking to a very specific church. And you have to understand what's going on historically, okay? So when Paul was writing to the church of Corinth, and he was telling them, it's better to not burn with lust. You should get married. Could he have been talking about you, like, with your one partner wanting to have sex? Sure, but you have to look at what was going on historically at the time. And at the time, there was a really big culture of temple prostitution going on, okay? And there was a very, like, sexually permissive culture. Married men were sleeping with temple prostitutes, like, people were all sleeping with each other, whatever. There was also, like, child abuse going on and things like that that was sort of normalized. And so my progressive personal opinion is that when he was writing to this church, he was saying, rather than engaging in true sexual immorality, right? Like, if you cannot keep your sexual desires to yourself and you're sleeping with temple prostitutes, you're sleeping with raping literal children. If you're doing these things, then it's better to get married and not engage in those things. That is the greater issue that I think he was talking about. Personally, I don't think that he was basically saying, if you want to sleep with your partner, then the right thing to do is just get married. Don't consider anything else. Base this on your sexual desire. Not what he's saying. I don't think he's talking about, like, modern day love marriages and relationships and premarital sex. I don't think that's what he's talking about. You have to understand the cultural basis. And once again, this is how purity culture lies to people. These people who are taught these verses, everyone knows the you shouldn't burn with lust, get married verse. You should be taught the historical context so that you can decide for yourself, did God intend for me to interpret this as, like, any premarital sex, or did God intend for me to interpret this as, like, a sexual ethic and not whatever, okay? We're gonna carry on, but I just want to let you guys know that context so you can make your own kind of end conclusion on this, because I do think there's a way for progressive Christians to read the Bible and not view it in such a harmful way as, like, this girl Abby would.
However, that's what I took it as growing up. I was like, oh no, I shouldn't have that feeling, so I should just block it off. Nope. I'm not even going to think about it. And I just had this view over time that sex was bad. Blanket statement, sex was bad. Sex after marriage in the way that God created it is so beautiful. But again, I didn't let my brain go there. And I didn't even realize that I didn't let my brain go there because I was so young. I didn't know what questions to ask. I didn't know what to bring up. And so I really realized when I got engaged, my fear around it. And there should not be fear around sex, but the devil will take anything.
We see often Christians who have been hurt by purity culture trying to once again blame it on anything but their religion or their theology, their view of the Bible. The devil doesn't take anything. This is a clear pattern. You've done thought-stopping techniques, you don't have a base education on sex, and you've told yourself your whole life that it's a really, really dirty, bad thing. Okay? She also has believed that, like, if you have premarital sex, you're going to bring baggage into your relationship. she hasn't covered this, but her spouse did have sex with other women premaritally. And so obviously that's going to bring a new layer of fear for her. Like, maybe she's done everything right, but what if he compares her? What if because they tell you that you are going to bring this baggage into it. Yes, God forgives you and makes you a new person, but that doesn't mean that he takes away the consequences of the sin.
He will latch onto anything, and he knew. I mean, he knew, okay? Because he can just, I don't know, find a target on find the center point on a target and just bing. And I let him do it. I let him take those thoughts in my mind and create and build this fear. So I really had a lot to work through in engagement. I had 2 waves of kind of freakouts during engagement when it came to sex. And I verbalized this in our marriage counseling with Ryan. And then I also just talked with Ryan about it separately. Again, trying to remain true to the boundaries that we had, because we didn't want to have too much of an intimate conversation about sex to where we did feel tempted to have sex before marriage, because we made that promise to God, we made that promise to each other, we made that promise to ourselves to not cross that line. And so the first wave of kind of, oh my gosh, I'm like actually going to do this now, was the mentality mindset behind it. It was, oh my gosh, I'm going to do something that I never really, not that I didn't think I was going to do it, but I never let myself think that I was going to do it. And so I just didn't think about doing it. So it was just the realization of it, of like, oh my gosh, I am, yep, I'm going to do this now. Wow. Okay. That's crazy. What do I do? It was just all these questions of like, I don't know what to do. I literally don't know what to do. And that might sound silly to you, but I would say that to people and be like, I don't know how to have sex. Like, I don't know what to do. And it'd either be like, don't worry, your body will know what to do. Your body will kick in and it'll take over and it'll just be natural. I'm so sorry, honey girl, but you cannot say that to me because it's only going to make me freak out more.
That would be true. Like this, it will naturally progress. I think that is typically true when you let the relationship, naturally progress. But it doesn't happen when you have been telling yourself you can't even think about it the whole time. You are ashamed of your body and your sexuality. You are worried that your partner is going to compare you. You're not just naturally, and you don't even know your body, right? Like, you don't know your body. You don't know your partner's body. You don't know how any of it works. Older Christians love to be like, you'll just figure it out. A lot of these people don't. I just did a video from Girl Defined where an older couple shared that they literally didn't figure out female sexual anatomy until after their daughter was born. The reality is that people don't figure it out, and people like to make fun of that. People love to act like that's so stupid, and, of course they'll be able to figure it out. People don't, okay? And what they don't figure out is the female side of the pleasure. They figure out the male side, and they don't figure out anything else. And so that is why we see so many Christian women talking about this. But the reality is, for her to be like, I don't know anything. I don't know the mechanics. She's not being overreactive here. She's being serious. For her to be like, I don't know positions. She literally does not know. Back to my story about 8 Mile. I was like, literally, how does that work? Because I didn't know. For you to learn how the human body works when you're naked for the first time in front of somebody else, that's just horrifying. It's like traumatizing. And also, because these women have never had to be vulnerable in that way, they've had essentially a friendship with these men, they don't even know if they're actually like safe emotionally or just safe in general as sexual partners.
I remember that feeling whenever, before I had my first kiss, someone was like, you'll just happen. Like, it just happens and your body will just know what to do. My body did not know what to do. Okay. When I had my first kiss, it was Akko Taco. It was weird, okay? I did what I thought I should do from the movies, because I've seen kissing scenes in movies. So I was like, okay, you like tilt your head, but like, which way do you tilt your head? Because I don't really know which way I'm supposed to tilt my head. So I guess I'll just like guess. And then like, I was like, okay, I'm supposed to like poke my lips out a little bit, I guess. And I mean, it was literally like that in my brain, okay? So if you haven't had your first kiss yet, rest assured, it'll be fine. Okay, it'll be okay. But for me, it was not this huge romantic thing, okay? When someone responded like that to me with like, oh, I don't know how to have sex, and then I got that response, it was just like, ugh, it was just aggravating. And nothing against the people that said that at all. It's just like, we come from different backgrounds in the way that we grew up, quite possibly. And
because learning these things in an educational setting or through books or your own research is appropriate. What is not is going to other couples and asking them to detail sex for you. I understand this is like, Christians love to be like, get a older sexual Christian mentor. no one, like not no one, but a lot of people don't actually want to do that because they do realize it's weird. I was asked to be a like mentor in this, a purity mentor for a minor girl when I was a legal adult. We were like a year and a half or 2 years apart or some 3. I don't know. I have to think about it. But we were enough years apart where it was like I was a legal adult and she was a minor, and she wanted, with the adults, they were like, yeah, this is normal. They wanted her to call me every time that she had lustful feelings. So every time she was turned on, they wanted her to call me. Nothing on her at all. That is horrific that she was in a situation where she felt like that was necessary. I did say no, right? That was the right thing to do for me to say, I'm not going to do that. Or I maybe said like, I don't know, like we can do check-ins, but like, don't call me like when you're in the moment type of thing. And then I didn't answer those calls. I didn't probably handle it the best way, but I just was like, I can't engage in these conversations with her. Like that is completely inappropriate. And I know that she's a legal adult, but who wants to sit down with someone and detail to them like sexual positions or pleasure or these things that it, like the way her questions, they're like the reality of the questions, but they would have been answered if she would have had the base education, right? And so people don't want to detail this in like an anecdotal personal way that she's asking them to, because that actually is like inappropriate and uncomfortable for people. They don't want to do that. Just like I did not want to have conversations, frankly, about masturbation with a child. I was like, that's completely inappropriate. I understand that they're looking at me as an older Christian woman, a mentor, and I remember very distinctly when I tried to very nicely say, you know, I think the Bible has a few different perspectives on this, and also I kind of tried to say, like, I don't think this is a sin, and I also don't think that you should be disclosing this to adults. Basically, she was really disappointed. I could tell that she was very disappointed by that, and I felt really bad, but I was just like, in my soul, in my heart, I feel morally immediately at unrest with this. Like, this is not, I understand that she is not trying to have this conversation with me from like a sexual angle, just like Abby isn't going to these mentors trying to do it because she's like enjoying the conversation in that way. But that doesn't make it any less appropriate, especially as the person who is in the position of power is older and has this education. It's like, you know that that is not right. That is not appropriate. And obviously Abby is still in it and she's still seeking this mentorship. So she's not at that point yet, but I would imagine when she gets older, she's going to recognize that like, this is something that women should be prepared in advance, where they have the education they need so they don't have to be having conversations like this. There's too much room for abuse, too much room for that, especially when so many Christians are getting married at like 18, 19.
And maybe we didn't. Maybe they waited too. But just for someone like me and my scenario and the things that I went through, that response made me freak out even more. Because when I tell you, like, they're like, oh yeah, your body will know what to do. I don't even know how to get into it. Like, I don't know how to take my clothes off in front of another man. And I went to sex ed class. Okay, I know what happens. Like, I can tell you, okay, you know, this thing does this thing and whatever. But I don't know the emotions. I don't know how to get into positions. I don't even know what positions are. Like, I know absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a flashcard of positions that people are going through, right? This tells me that when she's like, I went through the science class, maybe she did, but I think generally people do a little further education, or they have like these conversations with their friends, or they read a book. Abby obviously didn't do any of that, and if she genuinely retained that, again, she would know the answers to these questions, or she would be able to, like, if she understood how bodies work, she would be able to conceptualize these are some ways that sex could happen. Going back to my 8 Mile thing, I knew so little about the human body. Like, I understood that it was like what a general phallic object looked like, and I understood that it pointed I thought I understood that it pointed directly down at all times, did not move. I think I thought there was like a literal bone in it, maybe. I didn't think it moved. And so I was like, it made no sense. So it's like Abby, based on what she's describing to us, saying, I don't know any of these things. I don't think this is just standard anxiety about like, what if I'm good enough? I don't know all the right things. She's literally saying to us, I do not know how this works. And that is again, a failure on the education system. I know in public school, they're not teaching you sex positions, but if they are teaching you the basics of human anatomy and all of that, again, it's like you're going to be able to conceptualize that.
I was so I went and I talked to someone who had a similar experience to me, and I sat down with them and I was like, I need you to explain this to me as much as you can. Like, I don't understand. And again, it's hard because you don't know who you're talking to and you don't know what they've talked about with their person. And you also just want to respect the boundaries that you have, because sex is a sacred thing. Like, it's a thing between you and your spouse, and that's it. Well, and God. you, your spouse, and God. Okay. But God's not going to whisper in someone's ears like, hey, Abby and Ryan did this. I mean, maybe I don't think he would. I'm not God. Okay. Don't think he would do that. Everything I've read in the Bible does not support that he would do that. Okay. Moving on. So I got as much as I could, I guess, but I still was just like, I don't like, I there was just still a wonder there. So I kind of like settled into like, okay, I got through the fact that like, okay, I'm going to have sex. And then I actually started getting excited about it. Like a couple months after that, I was like, okay, like I'm actually going to do this. And I've waited this long for this. I'm excited. Like, this is going to be great. And it's going to be God honoring. And something Ryan said to me is, he was like, if you've waited and done things the way that God intended, why would he not bless it?
This is like a sexual prosperity gospel lie, a purity culture lie. I understand it sounds really nice to say, if you follow God's will for your life, if you follow God's plan, if you follow the rules, why wouldn't God bless it? Okay. The question is, why would God? Just for following the rules. We don't get a sticker for doing the right thing, okay? God forgives all of us. We're still sinful. Following the rules doesn't give you, like, extra blessings. It's this false prosperity gospel. People that are Christians still have their spouse, die a month after the wedding. People that are Christians still have terrible sex lives. People that have waited until marriage still have terrible marriages. And I'm not saying this to be negative. I'm saying this because it is them believing this lie, even though they'll say, I know that God doesn't promise this, or I know God didn't say that, but they believe like, well, why wouldn't God bless it? And if God has blessed it, it's still going to be good. So even if it's not perfect, it's still going to be good. And then they get into the reality of a sexual relationship and they realize like, oh, like my husband doesn't know female anatomy, nor do I, and it's painful the entire time for me, and I don't know how to vocalize that, and so now I never want to have sex, and we have, like, a really weird dynamic, or my husband and I have completely different, whatever, there's, like, a million things that can come up. I get, whatever, I don't want to be negative and be like, yeah, like, God's not gonna bless it. God, if God is real, God could bless it, sure, but that is not a guarantee that it's going to be good. I mean, look at Job, right? Job lived a holy life, he followed God, and God literally let the devil kill Job's entire family. He lost, like, all of his friends, his flocks of something, or he was farming, he was, like, a shepherd or something, whatever. He lost everything, you guys. And God allowed that, okay? And there are a million examples of this. God does not remove suffering from his people. I mean, look at Jesus. Jesus was perfect and holy, and God literally allowed him to be crucified on a cross. So it just is this purity culture lie, and it makes people unprepared, because now she's going to be hearing this from her husband, and she's going to go, yeah, I need to hang on to God's promises. Why wouldn't he bless this? Blessing it doesn't mean that it's going to be enjoyable. It doesn't mean that you're going to have a good time. And again, I'm not trying to be negative, but it's like people need to understand this so that they have the education they deserve. They deserve to know that that's a lie. They deserve to know that that's not biblical truth. Even though I don't believe the Bible's real, that's not actually promised in the Bible. They deserve to understand this so that they actually can take care of themselves and their future relationship. Because there's no worse start for these young marriages than having these physically and emotionally excruciating intimate relationships where you are completely on opposite ends of the spectrum. You don't know how to communicate about it, and it's like there's so much shame wrapped up in it.
Why would he not be there with you? Why would he not give you peace? And that just like sent a breath of fresh air over my soul. Anyways, so a couple months go by. We're about 2 months until the wedding, and a second wave of freak out hit me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I am going to have something inside of me. And that was like a bigger freak out, because I had like the realization that I was going to have sex, but this was like the realization of, oh, like you are going to like feel things. And my body had never experienced anything like that. Like I have never pleased myself in any way. I've never taken off clothes in front of a guy. Nothing. very inexperienced, very, very inexperienced. I've never even at that point had seen anything of a guy's. So, and again, like you see the pictures in sex ed class, okay, but, or like one time I accidentally got sent a picture and I didn't know. I like opened it on accident. Like I had no control over that. And I was like, yeah, but that's literally it. Okay. That's literally it. So it was just all of those thoughts. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is, whoa, I have no idea what this is going to feel like. And it was like the freak out of the feeling of it, of like, oh my goodness, this is going to be a lot for my body to handle. And like people have said it's supposed to hurt.
Hopefully at this point in the video, I've given you guys enough context about my own life for you to know that I'm not judging at all when I say this. But just because you are in your 20s, just because you're older, does not mean that you are emotionally ready to have sex. And it's clear that Abby is not. And I've met a lot of Christian women who were literally like in tears prior to their wedding over having sex. They were not ready. And it's hard because there's this expectation from the men that you will be having sex on your wedding night. You guys have waited your whole lives for this, and then you're going to be like banging it out your entire honeymoon. And that is a lot of pressure, a ton of pressure for these young women. They do not have the option to slowly kind of develop into these things and develop a normal sexual relationship. And from Abby's descriptions, again, not in a derogatory way, but it seems like she's not ready for her to be like, there's going to be something inside of me. Like, I know a lot of Christian women who also didn't even use tampons until they got married because they thought that would cause them to lust or fantasize, or like it would devalue them for their future husband. Just because she's 23 doesn't mean that she was ready. And it's really unfortunate that she had to just jump straight into sex and couldn't have kind of naturally developed this. And again, I get she's in her 20s, and so people are like, you should be ready. Secular people, other people that broke the rules, even if they're Christians, they were able to make out with people in high school or like have a long-term relationship where they were able to kind of develop more of these things, even if they still waited till marriage. They did not do any of that. Also, her being like, it's going to be a lot for my body to handle. No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. And for I don't know, it just like, that makes me so sad. It's like, how has she had multiple conversations with other Christians and she feels like this is going to be a lot for my body to handle? No, it's not. You're not giving birth. And no, it's not supposed to hurt. And this is another myth that is really, 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 I know it's rampant everywhere, but especially in Christian circles. And it's because the men are not prioritizing female pleasure. They don't know about it. They don't care about it. And they're therefore just like harming basically the woman. Basically they're entering the Sahara, or they're trying to drive a boat through the Sahara is essentially what's happening. And it's causing pain. It's not fun. It shouldn't hurt, you guys. Whatever. Like, I'm not saying that there might not be a little bit of discomfort for some of you, whatever. I'm not saying I know every single medical situation, but yeah, in general, like, pain should not be your takeaway when you look back on your first experience. And yeah, it's just, again, it's not a lot for your body to handle. And I get why she feels this way. This is a product of the programming. This isn't Abby's own fault. But again, it's just really, really sad that these people feel like they're not even allowed to do baseline research, because the reality is she does have access to the information to do better. And so does her husband. And they are actively choosing not to do that. But it's kind of under duress because they believe that they'll be sinning and could go to hell if they do the research and then lust.
Like, that terrifies me. Terrifying. It was so terrifying to me, which again is not a God-honoring feeling, but the world, evil, all of that was just like consuming my brain around this beautiful God-honoring thing. And isn't it just like the devil to take something so beautiful and just warp it, you know? And I just let all of it in because I was so scared, and I didn't take it. I took it to God. I really tried to take it to God, but my human brokenness took over because I knew what to expect if I freaked out about it, rather than letting it go to God and not knowing what to expect, if that makes sense. Like, it's so hard to release control over a situation. Even though I know God's way is always better, my humanness inside of me wants to be like, okay, but my way may be harder, but at least I know what to expect. And so I just wanted to like take it. And if I could say anything of me now to that girl who is just so terrified, I would be like, trust that God has provided a husband who is going to meet you where you are at.
In purity culture, although they would not explicitly say this, I'm just going to read between the lines for you guys and say it bluntly. They basically tell you that because your husband is naturally going to be more sexual, he's going to have a higher sex drive, he's going to struggle with these things more, he likely will have masturbated, he'll likely have watched porn, and he likely will just know these things. And so he's also your spiritual leader, so he kind of also is like your sexual leader. And your body belongs to your husband in marriage, and so you just need to trust that like your husband's got it. And there is like a line, right, where yes, as the husband, they should be checking in, making sure the wife is comfortable, trying to do what they can. However, the husbands are in the same boat a lot of times as them, where they believe that doing this research is wrong. They don't know female anatomy or male anatomy. They're kind of relying on their wife to know their own body because neither of them are doing research. The wife has not ever she doesn't know anything about her body. And it becomes this like a problem together that's not necessarily on one of them, okay? It's a problem of both of them. And it's just that like the male pleasure they figure out faster and easier, and then they never try to like explore beyond that because they have such like an uncomfortable experience figuring that part of it out that they just don't go further, and it creates these unhealthy dynamics. For saying like, you know, just trust that your husband's got it, it places this burden on him now that's not fair. They need to be in this together. They need to be two adults who are communicating, who both know their boundaries and their bodies, and who can advocate for themselves. I hate that they do this. This is really, really common. And again, this can go, like, there is a line where it's like, you do know better regardless. You need to make sure your partner is comfortable and consenting and enthusiastic, and you need to try to figure out how to make it enjoyable for both of you and all of that. But again, these people don't even, a lot of times they can't even communicate about these things. We've seen that in numerous videos I've posted. And so I don't know. I'm not saying it's okay, but it feels like a doomed plan. Like this is setting them up for failure, because even though her fiance has had premarital sex, I doubt that he was having like educational conversations. They describe it as he like maybe had a couple one night stands in college. So I don't think that he is the most educated either. He's not. They need to read a book. They need to read a book.
I put myself in this place where I thought I had to deal with it all on my own. I thought I had to just figure it out all on my own and be like, oh, well, I need to present this to Ryan so that he likes it or he thinks I'm good at this. And that's just not how it is. Like, it is a two-person thing. And Ryan's talked about he's, you know, done a lot more things than I have. And he had sex before, and that's not new news. He's said that online, so that's not me airing out anything that, you know, he hasn't said online before. But I caught myself. I told him, I was like, what if I'm not as good as the other girls that you've had sex with? I said that. That was just a fear. I know there's so many things that I'm sharing with you guys right now that's like, Abby, why would you think that? Like, you shouldn't think that this Christian girl, like, you should know that God is. I really should. But I am human and I am broken. And I had to be honest with him and be like, I am sitting here being like, what if I'm not as good as the other girls? What if I'm not? And Ryan looked at me and he was like, Abby, I am starting from the same place as you. Because when Ryan got saved, God made him new. And Ryan got saved in his 20s.
I feel like this is also a minimization of her concern. I think he could say to her, you know, I'm not going to compare you. These other women aren't in my mind. That's not really how sex works. But saying God made me whole again, he made me new, he forgave me. I've already kind of touched on this, but that doesn't mean that God absolves you of the consequences. You're not absolved from the consequences. And this was what they say in purity culture. They literally teach this to you about sex. So they'll say, you know, yes, if you've had premarital sex, God can forgive you, but you still are going to be bringing these things into marriage. You're going to be bringing in the baggage. And particularly they say with like porn, if you've ever watched porn before, that like you're not going to be as satisfied in marriage. They do not say that being a Christian, being saved, absolves you from the consequences. So this is kind of a misinterpretation by both of them. Yes, he's saved. Yes, he's made clean. Yes, God doesn't see that sin anymore. But they also believe that there are lasting harms from having premarital sex, that you can have soul ties, that you, like, I have said this before in my videos, but I was literally taught that if you have premarital sex, that you will be thinking about that other person or people every time you have sex with your your spouse in the future, and that's why it's problematic, because you'll be like going through a Rolodex of all of these sexual memories essentially, instead of focusing on your partner. Crazy news. That is actually not how it works. I think if that's happening for you, that's probably like a sign that something is not right in your relationship or your intimate life. But you're literally taught this. And so, while, yes, this isn't how it works, and I don't think she should be concerned about that, she is literally taught this, and him quoting this at her is kind of a misinterpretation of the scripture and a minimization of her concerns. And I think there is a much better way to go about this. And it's just another example of how purity culture conflicts. Like, you're told, yes, God can make you clean and blah, 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 but also you're going to have all these consequences. And yes, you waiting for a marriage will make sure you don't have those problems. But if you marry a partner who didn't wait, then you could still have, it's like, it just, none of this is based on the Bible. Truly, you guys, and that is why it is so confusing. That's why, I don't want to say that's why it's so harmful, because there's a lot of things that are biblical that are harmful, but this is truly like an invention, I feel like, of control, a mode of control from the church that is not accurate of the Bible. And I also feel that way about like the church's takes on people being gay or queer or whatever, being in a different gender or sexual, like whatever, gender identity or sexuality, sexual presenting relationship. I know that I'm butchering the wording on that. This isn't scripted, so bear with me. I also think that is a misunderstanding of the scripture in the historical context, right? So this is what they're taught, but I hate it.
So he had experienced a lot of things that were not God-honoring. And I was pulling from before Christ Ryan and being like, oh, well, you're still there. Like, I was like putting mentally him back there and being like, oh yeah, Ryan's going to think I'm not as good as, just some crazy things. But I felt it, and I had to be honest, and I had to tell him. And when he told me, Abby, I am starting from the same place as you, like we are both doing this for the first time, that's when I realized, like, oh my goodness, I am stripping away the power of God over his life. And not literally, I don't have the power to strip away God, like, let's be for real, but mentally I was putting this expectation on him that like he was not made new.
No wonder she's confused. I wish that we could just live in reality together. It's okay that he had premarital sex. God does not make it so that he did not have premarital sex. God just forgives him, and he's viewed as blameless, right? That doesn't mean that he did not actually do those things. They're not living in reality. She's not allowed to accept that he had premarital sex, so how can she accurately understand that it truly is not going to have an effect on her relationship, okay? Like, it's not going to be a problem, but with her viewpoint and pretending that he didn't, and believing that if he wasn't saved, then it would have all these terrible, of course she's confused. Of course they're having a hard time navigating this because there's so much weirdness at play here. He had premarital sex, and that's okay. They don't have to pretend like he didn't for their marriage to be beautiful and for their sex life to be beautiful.
In Christ, because I was thinking that he was going to compare me to his other experiences. And there was just a lot of chaos in my mind, a lot of evil in my mind. And I just had such a warped vision of it. I think because I just didn't talk about it growing up. I didn't really move past the quote unquote sex is bad mindset in the church. And I feel like that can be pretty common with a lot of people who I've talked to who were also virgins growing up. And when I raise my children, I want them to know it's so beautiful and to not be afraid of it, but know it's beautiful the way God intended, and really try to instill in them that it is such a beautiful thing. Because it's not that I didn't know it was a beautiful thing, but I didn't believe it in my heart.
I think Christians perpetuate this belief after they have had negative experiences themselves, because they think, like, if I waited this long, if I only had experiences with this one partner, I brought no baggage into the relationship, and it still was this traumatic and this bad and this difficult to figure out, maybe we never figured it out, maybe we never figure it out, I couldn't imagine going through this with other people that I don't know as well. I couldn't imagine going through this experience with people who I don't, like, trust and love as much, okay? And I think from their viewpoint, that makes sense, but it's kind of a misunderstanding, because the reality is that when people let themselves normally develop, they are not having, ideally barring abuse and like crazy situations, they're not having traumatizing experiences. People who are, even if you want to say it's unhealthy, people who are engaging in hookup culture, they are not having traumatizing experiences every single time. They're not hating it. They're not walking away feeling dirty and bad. So I think that they're like telling their kids, like, really, really save it for marriage with this one person, because for them, it's been such a painful, horrific thing that they're like, we can't imagine how hard this would be if we had to go through this with multiple people. They're not understanding that purity culture is the problem, and that if they had developed naturally, it wouldn't be a problem, even if they had developed with that one person still.
Talking with Ryan about things, talking with the Lord about things, getting advice from people, this, that, and the other, going to marriage counseling. And then we got married, and I was very excited for the wedding night. I actually had like some lingerie or whatever, just like tried to make it like fun and exciting. And our wedding night was, I'm going to spare you the details because I'm not going to literally walk you through everything, because again, that's for Ryan and I. But what I will say is I had to look at Ryan, okay? And I was like, for me, we have to remove any idea of setting a mood or having this really intense romance involved, because I need you to walk me through everything. I need you to talk to me about everything. I need to be aware right now, because I've never experienced anything like this before and have no idea what I'm doing. And the way that I'm going to feel most comfortable is if we walk through everything together, talking about it.
I've told you guys this before, so I'll keep it short. But for those of you who don't know, when I was in middle school, I went to a Christian therapist, and I remember somehow purity came up. And I was telling my therapist that I really, really had a lot of anxiety about kind of this Christian model of purity in marriage, because to me, it genuinely felt like a humiliation ritual. Like Christian women a lot of times will do like lingerie bachelorette parties, and it's like these women have only ever held hands. That feels like a fucking humiliation ritual. It's these women are not like... If you are going to set women up to be like childlike when they enter a sexual relationship, don't make them wear lingerie. Like, this is not, if it was right and it worked for them, then great. But in general, I don't think that coming out on your wedding night in lingerie is congruent with also saying this can't be romantic, this can't be passionate. This needs to literally be clinical. You walk me through every step. Like, that is not, like, why are we having these women? It feels like a humiliation ritual. Like, I did not like it. And what my therapist said to me was, well, Lauren, a lot of Christians don't have sex on their wedding night. They take like 3 months, 6 months, because they work their way up to it. I don't know if that's true or not, but the reality is when these men have waited until they're 23 or 25 or whatever, or this guy had premarital sex, but it sounds like he's waited for several years now. They've been abstinent for a long period of time. They expect it on their wedding night. They expect it on their honeymoon. This is like the culture of wedding night and honeymoon, right? And so wives feel like they have to do it. The other thing is that everybody around them knows that they are going to be losing their virginity in the date of when they'll be doing that. The whole thing is just a humiliation ritual. Like, these women are giving you lingerie. You're supposed to, like, I hate all of it. I feel bad for her, because it's like, I'm glad that she felt like she could communicate with him. But at the same time, like, even the way she's describing them discussing how this is going to go in advance, it doesn't sound enjoyable to me. It doesn't sound fun. It sounds like it is going to be uncomfortable. And again, nothing necessarily wrong with that, but I just think if they had the base education that they deserved as a human being, this would not be the situation that they were in.
Sex did not come naturally to me. It did not. And yet, our wedding night was so beautiful and so enjoyable, even though it was uncomfortable and weird. There was not this like mood set where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm swept up and now my body's taking over. But it was not like that. It wasn't. And the reason I'm going into so much detail about this is because I want to give the listener who may be feeling like how I felt comfort in knowing that that is okay. And maybe your experience is different.
I mean, it depends on what she's talking about. She's like, I'm sorry for giving so much information. Girl, you're giving us no information. You didn't feel swept up in the moment. It sounds like, I'm just going to be blunt. Again, I'm sorry if any of my family's watching this. It sounds like she's just saying that she never got turned on. Okay? And is that with the culture they're coming from, am I going to jump to demonizing either of them immediately because of that? No. I think it can be very, very difficult for Christian women. This is like the number one issue, is that they can't relax and they can't get turned on because they have these feelings of shame and this is wrong, and they're just very closed off, and they also feel shameful about expressing enjoyment. Like, should that be normalized? Should we say that's okay as an experience? I would say no. I'm not going to say that we should vilify people if that happens, but I think that that is a concern. That's maybe like, hey, we're noticing these issues early on. You did not feel like you got turned on and got into it at any point throughout our whole honeymoon and marriage. Let's go to a couples therapy and a sex therapist. Let's read a book. Let's, talk to a counselor. I think that is a good point to notice those things. I don't think that we should just normalize it. And I don't think, some Christians in purity culture, they're talking about this like spiritual, incredible, life-changing experience. She's not talking about expecting that. She's literally talking about, like, my body at no point ever told me anything to do. It sounds like she wasn't turned on. If her husband, I don't know what his experience is like. So again, it's like, I don't want to immediately judge people, but it's like, he should know enough to know that that is not, that's something that they should take a pause and maybe say, hey, let's step back. Like, maybe we do just make out for the next couple months and like let things naturally progress.
When we had like showered and everything was done, and I looked at him and I was like, did we just do it? Like, I still wasn't sure because it was so foreign to me.
I'm gonna go back again here to the base education. This tells me, she said I took the science class, I took the class. She did not retain it enough, and I think that's very normal. I think people get that base education and about like protection and stuff, and then you continue to learn as you get older and you do your own research and whatever. But for her to have finished having sex and then ask him, did we just have sex? Did we just actually do the act? It's this base education thing. She was not ready to have sex if she didn't even know what it was. And again, not dogging on her for that. This is a failure of purity culture programming. I think that we should qualify this as like some form of trauma. I don't know what we can call it. It's because it's like they are both consensually inflicting it on themselves, but sometimes the husband, I do think it comes into like a marital rape category for sure, or coercion territory for sure. This is just really concerning though. It's like she was not ready, and I think that having sex before you're ready, feeling pressured into it, being coerced societally essentially into doing it, I think that is very traumatic and that's going to have lasting impact on you and your views on intimacy, especially with the person you were forced into it with. Because now you're not just overcoming your negative beliefs, but you're trying to overcome these negative and traumatic experiences that you formed with this person.
It is something that is going to take time. It's not a one and done, okay, I've ripped off the Band-Aid and now I understand. For us, it was not like that. And I don't think it's commonly like that. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we're a different story. Maybe we're in the minority here. But I also left it feeling very excited and happy because I had done it. We had done it. And it was not anything that I had worried or feared about. It was just different. It wasn't even bad. It was, a little unusual, maybe. A little uncomfortable, yeah. But it was also enjoyable because the Lord was so prevalent in it. And I can't really give you an exact reason why other than because he blessed it. And the Lord was so prevalent on our wedding night, giving me so much peace that surpassed all understanding. I had such immense peace and joy being in the arms of my husband and knowing that the Lord had a blanket of peace, security, and joy over me. I mean, it was literally him. It was all him. And waking up the next morning, day after day, like on our honeymoon, we had a lot of time to spend, doing stuff. And it got better and better each time. And by better, I just mean more natural for me. My body started responding, and Ryan and I started understanding how our bodies fit together. And it was great. And I actually enjoyed it and like had fun, and things started, feeling good. Like I started getting good feelings. And the more that we were intimate with each other, the more mechanically my body got more used to it. And, not to get too graphic, but like, I don't know. You understand. My body just got used to it. I'm not going to go past that. But from someone who had never had anything inside of her before, like, yeah, obviously your body's not really going to know how to respond. So
I just don't know what she means by this. Your body's not going to know how to respond. They're so, intellectualizing sex that it's like, girl, you don't need to tell your body what's going on. I think if you get out of your head, then things will be a lot easier for you. Obviously, I love that they communicated things seem to get better and better, but I think from what she's going to say, like, later on, it sounds more like they had an experience where she kind of felt comfortable and okay with it and enjoyed it slightly. And then she's going to get into, like, how things tanked again. So I don't really think that they were figuring it out. I think that just because they were on their honeymoon and the amount of times that they had it, she felt a good feeling at some point during one of them. And, now they're going to be back to figuring it out. So I know that all of this sounds good, and if it ended here, I would be like, okay, great, they figured it out. She was anxious, and then they figured it out. But that's not actually what happens, and that's rarely what we see happen in purity culture. It's not usually like, oh, a month of trial and error, which is obviously, you figure your partner out, but that's not really what we're discussing here.
It literally is just like a muscle. It's like, if I go out and try to play soccer tomorrow, I'm not going to be very good. But if I practice soccer every single day, I'm going to get better and better and better at it. And it's going to feel more natural to me. My instincts are going to kick in. I'm going to respond better. I mean, it's the same thing. Like it literally is just like a muscle. And so, yeah, then we came back from our honeymoon and now we're married. Okay. So let me tell you where I'm at right now. And I've been very slow to share this because this is something Ryan and I are currently working through, but I also think it's so important to share because I was under the impression that, like, once you started having sex, that it was just going to be easy breezy, beautiful. Like, once Ryan and I, like, figured out how to do it, boom, like, it's perfect. Here we go. And now we just know what to do. Yeah, that's not our experience. That is not our experience at all.
Because once again, it's the mindset going into it. They've over-spiritualized sex and intellectualized it, when in my opinion, it's actually neither. It's emotional, it's physical. I don't think it's of spiritual importance personally. And so yeah, it's going to be hard. She keeps talking about how God was in that moment. They're trying to invite God into their sex life. This is very much something that's in purity culture. I'm sorry, if you are praying and focusing on the Lord and, like, spiritual peace, it's going to be hard to get into that moment with your spouse. And again, it's like, we just see this so often in purity culture. I don't think they, based on her description, figured it out on their honeymoon. I think they had an experience where it was just a better one for her that day, and they didn't really figure it out. And this is the sad part about purity culture, because they should not really be having these conversations or issues at this point. They shouldn't have to be having it. And should is a kind of a wrong word because there really is no should in life. But I think, again, with the baseline education, if they had the opportunity to progress normally, I think it would be a lot easier. I mean, when people are not dealing with purity culture, they're able to progress normally, and the progression, what are you actually doing? It's foreplay. You're spending the majority of those times doing foreplay and building up to the ultimate act of sex. These people do not have experience with any of that, right? Like, they're not making out, they're not nothing, and they skip straight to sex, and these other things they've been staying away from, so they don't have sex the whole time, and then they don't really include it in their sex life. Like, they're just not doing foreplay, and it makes for a bad experience. So I obviously don't know exactly what's going on for them, but I think, again, she's, like, spiritualizing it and being like, I thought things were just going to magically get figured out. Well, yeah, because that's what purity culture and older adults have taught you. That's not actually the reality of life when you have developed so many negative thought patterns around these topics.
And let me just explain. So when Ryan and I got home, we just went back to normal life, and life gets busy. And when life gets busy, you get tired. And when you get tired, you don't have sex all the time. And when you don't have sex all the time, your body doesn't respond how it does when you do have sex all the time.
I don't really know what she means by this. Obviously, if you're in a routine, then you're in a routine, and that's going to make things easier. But it seems like, again, they haven't figured things out. And so she maybe gets more mentally comfortable with it if they're doing it more in a routine. And when they're not, then she's like, I don't really want to do it because it's actually not that enjoyable for me. But she like realizes that I don't actually like it that much. Also, another big lie in purity culture is just that men are going to have a higher sex drive than women. This is not always the case, obviously. And a lot of Christian women get into these marriages and either their husband wants way more sex than they do and it's problematic and they feel like they just have to be like giving of themselves and fulfill their needs as a wifely duty, or that they want sex way more than their husband, and that is very confusing and like embarrassing to them and hurtful because they're told that their husband, basically they're going to have to be fending him off all the time, and especially early marriage, that it's just going to be literally all the time. And the reality of life is that that is like typically not the case, right? Like especially when you're both working full time, you're stressed out, you're traveling, you just got whatever, like there's a lot on your plate, especially if your sexual relationship is another thing that is stressful to you and you're trying to figure out, it's not enjoyable. You're not, yeah, like it just, they're set up to take these things as really big problems, take them really personally, or take it as I'm doing something wrong sexually, rather than understanding my husband is a human being as well, and he is going to have his own sex drive that is unique to him, that is not laid out just by him being a male, and it's going to vary person to person, and we might differ. I might have a higher sex drive than him, but that is just not even talked about as a possibility in purity culture or the church.
And, you know, for other people, like, you know, I don't know what this right proper number of the amount of times you should have sex in a week or a month or however long you should have sex is. I think it's different for everyone. I've talked with my friends and with close people in my life about, you know, their quantity of intimacy times, and it's all different. So I think that's the first thing to just wipe off. Like, it is all very different. And
I feel really bad for her that she is like seeking out so much input on these topics from other people, because it is so personal. Like, she should be able to tell a trusted friend if she's having problems, right? But she's seeking out so much information on baseline things, and you can just see how stressed out and anxious she is. And it's like, you've been married for 1 month. You do not need to be taking a poll of everyone you know what the normal number of times a month or a week are in marriage. It's just, this is like, it gets more and more disturbing and upsetting to me the more that I watch this. And it's like both disturbed that she's like promoting this and the harm there, like that she's promoting it and perpetuating it, but then also that like she is speaking these words out loud and is like, yeah, this was the right thing. Like, I mean, it just, again, I've told you guys, just because you're, you know, in your 20s doesn't mean that you're ready to have sex. She's functioning, I feel like, at a much, like, lower stage of this. Like, this is something that, like, somebody in high school would be asking. Like, I just don't know adults that have conversations like this.
We didn't have sex as much as we did on our honeymoon, as people would expect. It's your honeymoon. Like, you literally have no responsibilities other than each other. So yeah, we came home and life just picked up. And as life picked up, we didn't not pay attention to each other at all. I mean, we work together, we live together, like we're always together. But I think just other priorities took priority. And with that, we kind of let our intimacy fall on the back burner. And that's when I realized, like, oh, I don't fully have this thing figured out. Like, why is this, you know, feeling weird? Like, why is this hurting now? And it didn't when we were on our honeymoon, and just all these things where I was like, wait, why is it not working now? Why am I feeling, you know, a little bit of fear again? Why am I not where I was on our honeymoon? I thought I had worked through that. So Ryan and I, when we started working together, we went to a marriage counselor because we were like, okay, we want to be able to set good boundaries. We want to just, you know, we're going to be coworkers. And I've heard a lot of experiences of spouses that work together that when they do work together, there's a lot of conflict that arises. And so I was like, I don't want to, we both were like, we don't want to have conflict arise and then have to go somewhere. We want to, go see someone and implement tools in our life now proactively so that we don't reach a point where we become each other's bosses and we're coworkers and, we get on each other's nerves and we don't know how to be romantic with one another. We didn't want to get to that place. So we were like, let's just go to marriage counseling. Well, we obviously talk about our sex life in marriage counseling. It's just, something that we're very passionate about talking about. And I'm not passionate about, we just think it's important, especially because we, for me on my side, I'm like, oh, why does it not feel as natural to me anymore? Like, am I doing something wrong? All these things. And so he gave us this book. First of all, our marriage counselor is incredible. It's at church. He's at church. But he gave us this book, His Needs, Her Needs. And we read a chapter of this in pre-marriage counseling, and it was great. It talked about, a guy and a girl, and you can think about like each person in the relationship having a love bank. And so the first chapter kind of goes into like, oh, okay, if I do something for Ryan, then that puts money into his love bank, and you want to, fill up each other's love banks. Sexual fulfillment. If you are virgin, not a virgin, waited, haven't waited, whatever your history is, if you've been married for 18 million years, been married for 2 months, been married for 2 days, I recommend everyone to get the book, His Needs, Her Needs. And if you only read one chapter, it's 15 pages. Read the sexual fulfillment chapter. Okay. Now, if you're just dating someone for like a week, don't read it. There's no need for you to read it. Like, just don't read it, because you're just going to make yourself want it more.
Reading books about the mechanics of sex and sexual intimacy and sex drives is not going to make you want to have more sex. Also, for the same reason that they didn't get a fucking book before this to educate themselves, other Christians in their same viewpoints are not going to go get this book even though she's recommending it. Christians pretty much will only read these books because they're so told that it's wrong. Even after marriage, they will only do it at the recommendation of like another couple or a mentor or their pastor or a marriage counselor. They're not just going to dive into books about these. So it's like comical to me that she is suggesting this to her viewers when there are a million books on these topics. Her and Ryan had every opportunity to read this early on, but instead they've just been polling the community of women who have the same purity culture sickness as them.
This chapter literally put words to feelings I didn't even know I had until I heard it. I may have learned with Ryan physically what sex is, but I am just now starting to learn and understand emotionally and mentally my needs in sex. And that's nothing against Ryan. That's nothing against anyone that I asked advice from. That's simply because I didn't know what questions to ask, and I didn't know how to evaluate and verbalize my feelings because I didn't even know what my feelings were until I heard them in a sentence statement in this chapter in this book. So Ryan and I read this chapter not too long ago, and there were so many times where I was like, Ryan, that's me. And I didn't even know that was me. It is helping me uncover why I have these mental blocks, why I have these little thoughts that pop up here and there, and why I still feel sometimes like I'm not able to fully like relax into intimacy. And that's not anything against Ryan. That's not anything against anyone. I'm saying this because sex is a journey, and it's not just like we have it figured out and now we're good, now we're done.
I'm glad or hopeful that this book is teaching them the basics, and obviously I've been a huge proponent of this base education this entire video. But I think kind of at this point it's like, yes, it's good, it'll be helpful, but it's also like a little bit too late because they have a lot of ideological harms and issues that have come up because of purity culture now that are baked into their beliefs. And unfortunately, you can't go to your abuser to heal you. They can't get the solution from a Christian book. Yes, I do think Christian books are fine if you want to educate yourself on the basics of the mechanics, but when it comes to viewpoints, when it comes to outlook, when it comes to having a healthy understanding and a healthy dynamic, these books cannot help you, they cannot heal you. And so even though I'm glad that this will be an improvement, I am almost certain it is not going to actually fix their problems, because the problem isn't actually physical between them, it's the mentality about it.
For example, a man, after he reaches his happy jollies, the climax of sex, once he's done, he's done. He's tired, he wants to move on, he doesn't want to talk, he has nothing left in him, he just wants to chill. A girl wants to emotionally talk and keep going and like wants to emotionally continue being intimate.
This is a great example of why these books cannot help you heal when they are the same religion and framework and theology that hurt you in the first place. This is just obviously not true. Yes, some men may respond this way. There's like I saw like back in the day, there was some internet discourse around like it was like post-nut clarity. It was post-nut clarity. But there are tons of men that want to cuddle and hang out after the act. There are tons of women that are like ready to get back to their chores afterwards too. So it's like, it's so harmful when they place people in these boxes, because when one of them doesn't fall in that category, then they think something is wrong. Like if she is a type of person that is like, I don't want to spend 45 minutes in bed after we have sex, then he could view that potentially as really hurtful, especially if he is that way. He should be like, he's reading that book going, well, like, this is how women are supposed to respond. Why isn't my wife doing that? And vice versa. And it's the same thing with sex drives. There are a lot of areas that this crosses over into.
Women are going to reach sexual fulfillment through other ways other than the actual physical action of having sex. Now, this is stereotypically, there are studies in this book that literally tell majority percentage of women experience these things. So when I'm saying this is majority, not all, okay? But it makes so much sense now. Like hearing that, I'm like, wait, I do feel more connected with Ryan whenever, we're cuddling or doing things that aren't necessarily like physical, and to where that might be different for him, or for the person that you're with, that might be different. Again, stereotypically, it is different for guys.
I just don't even have words at this point. I mean, she's saying I thought she was saying the stat that like the majority of women don't have a fulfilling experience from PIV alone. I thought that's what she was saying, but now it sounds like she's just talking about foreplay, that she is more fulfilled from foreplay than the act of sex, which once again, I mean, that's great, but it seems like she just thinks that I don't think that she is having a good time. I'll just put it that way, because if she is saying that the best part of it for her is like cuddling, yeah, that's frustrating. Also, in these relationships, you avoid intimacy, you avoid anything they would consider foreplay. So kissing at all, even holding hands for some couples, front hugging for some couples. They avoid all of these things for so long, and it's so closely tied to sex that they don't integrate it into their relationship once they get married. Like the husband isn't getting home from work and they're not hugging for 30 seconds. They're not making out. They're not doing other intimate things. And so she could be totally like, I'm just starved for baseline intimacy, and sex is jarring because we don't have that covered. Whereas he's like, for the guy, he might not care as much. But again, it's like you can't make these gendered statements like that. I was really hoping that she actually got educated on like the importance of foreplay, but she's literally talking about like cuddling after sex and how that's more fulfilling to her.
For a little while, was just kind of like, okay, like let's just do this, and then I would wonder why it would be painful, or I would hurt, like it wouldn't feel natural to me. Now I understand, because I didn't give my I didn't give my body time to prepare itself to be intimate with someone. But I needed that. Physically, I needed that. Mentally, I needed that. Emotionally, I needed that. And again, I literally didn't know. And
okay, you didn't know, but also you shouldn't have to beg your spouse, especially your spouse who has had sex before, for foreplay. You literally said to him, walk me through this, explain everything to me. And he said, okay, this is how it works. Literally only on my end. Like, this is where I start to judge the partners, and a lot of times it starts to feel just like they don't care about you and irresponsible. It doesn't take a female body a long time, but yeah, you can't just literally go from 0 to 100 like clothes on to like mid-sex. Obviously. Or I shouldn't say it wasn't obvious to them, but he knows that. He should have known that. He should have known we need more time. He has that experience, and yeah, like, I get more disgusted the more I watch these, especially with the men. It's like, I don't like to, especially when they come from the same background, it's like, I don't want to vilify them straight off the bat, but it's like, okay, at that point, if the problem was literally 0, like, you're telling me that he didn't know that.
Some people might know this. Like, there are some people that know that, but I didn't know. And I didn't know to ask that. So I just kind of figured like, oh, I'm supposed to operate on the same time clock that Ryan operates.
Do Christian people think that secular couples are like having to, like, women are verbally having to ask people for foreplay? Because that just is really not happening. And if that did happen, that would be like, I feel like a breakup where, like, people, it wouldn't make it very far. Because it just would be like, that's not, yeah, like, I get it, yes, you do have to, like, advocate for yourself, but this is really basic. This is not something that, like, secular people are having to ask their partner for.
That's what I did. I was like, oh, I shouldn't even be thinking about it, so it's bad. Like, I just shouldn't think about it. Like, it's bad. I'm not going to do it till marriage, so I'm just not going to think about it. Totally cut it off. It's bad. Sex, the way that God created, is not bad. It's not.
Okay, but she's like, if I could go back, I would tell myself it's not bad. Girl, but you still, like, are telling everyone, I mean, I cut some of these out, but she's told, like, the viewers multiple times, if you're not married yet, if you're not literally weeks from engagement, don't watch this. She's not even talking about anything explicit here. She's saying, don't read this book unless you're about to get engaged, or, like, buy the book, but don't read the chapter on sex. She, like, I hate this. Or her being like, now I know that desire is okay, but lust is bad. What is the difference in your worldview? Because I guarantee that she is not going to be able to verbalize one. There's so many inconsistencies in this framework, and it's hard to watch, honestly. It's hard to watch her make these mental jumps, and it's hard to consistently watch women get into marriages where they're told they're going to have a great sex life where their husband won't even do foreplay. I am probably going to be doing more on Abby and Ryan. There is also a couple that they did an interview with called Ross and Ava that I've been watching their YouTube videos. They have almost no viewers. I actually saw Zelf on a Shelf reacted to some TikToks of theirs. We're going to be covering Abby and Ryan more, so please support this video if you liked watching it. If you would like to hear more about them, drop a comment, support it, hype this video, whatever you want to do. Hit share and copy link, because I would like to kind of add them into the rotation. They have a lot of videos that are very concerning, in my opinion, and so I think that they're definitely someone that you guys would be interested in seeing in the future. If you guys made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel, or double check to make sure that you are subscribed if you're not already, because about half of you guys that watch my videos on a consistent basis are actually not subscribed to my channel yet. So even if you think you are, you might actually not be. So go ahead and check that out for me really quick. If you want to support me even further, you can always become a member to my channel and see these videos a little bit sooner than everyone else. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.